So I wanted to make sure that the underground scene in the Bronx was given, I'd say probably even more attention than the larger bands. I mean, part of that too is the larger bands and musicians are just much harder to get in touch with. So, but it was also intentionally so. And, to also document real on the ground stuff, I mean, which Chucky is incredibly helpful with and remembers like more details than like God himself, like where bands played, like where the venues were in the Bronx at any given time, because that's a part of the whole landscape too. And, the flyers, all of that. So that was my way of thinking to highlight this incredibly rich musical scene that people don't often notice, whether they're in the Bronx or, especially if they're outside the Bronx, they have no clue.
What's up, everybody? It's Keefy at GhostCultMag.com. Once again, I am super excited to be joined by Dr. Stephen Payne and Chucky Brown. They are the two of the three instigators of this incredible exhibition at the Bronx County Historical Society on Bronx and New York City, in particular, rock and metal history. And I'm just tickled pink to talk to both of you today. Chucky, I know you sort of tangentially. We have a lot of mutual people in common. We've probably been to all the same shows. Dr. Payne, I've been a fan for a while since you started doing Uptown Rumble when I became aware of you. So, and I actually was a subscriber to the mailing list of the museum even before that. So,
Wow.
welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you both. This is huge for me. I am a son of the Bronx, New York. I come from New York City originally. I live in California now. I lived in Boston for a while. Also, that's when I went back to school, to grad school. So when I'm not doing marketing or music marketing, I run Ghost Cult Mag with my partner Omar Cordy, also from a New York City guy, still in New York. We had sister bands. His band was from Queens. My bands were all from the Bronx, and we became friends, bandmates, and now we have a website together. So crazy shit in the world of journalism.
Nice.
But tell us a little bit about this, Dr. Payne. Tell us, how you, what's your backstory and how did we get to do this? Because this is unlikely but amazing.
Yeah, sure. So, I've been a fan of punk and metal, since I was 13. I got into it through the radio, like pretty much everyone, some of the radio stuff at the time. I grew up in late 90s, early 2000s. So that's, the period that I started getting into it. I grew up in some incredibly small town in Southeast Texas. But, since the internet was becoming a little bit of a thing at that point, it wasn't too long before I started, discovering and listening to some bands from New York, like Agnostic Front, The Casualties, those kind of bands at the time. Never imagined I'd live in New York. Thought it'd be badass if I lived in New York, but yeah, fast forward from when I was 13 to I guess probably around 13 years later, I moved to New York. And I kind of gotten a little bit into all different other kinds of music by that point in time. Wasn't as much into punk and metal, but for whatever reason, breathing the New York air rekindled that spirit for me. I started getting back into it. And I've lived in the Bronx the whole time I've lived in New York now. I've been in New York 13 years. And I said, you know what? Let me see what Bronx bands there were. I'd heard of Billy Club Sandwich. I'd listened to them a little bit back in the day. I don't know if I knew they were from the Bronx. But bands like that I'd heard of. But I started digging more and more into it, going back even to the 70s. I'm like, holy shit, there's such an amazing history here. And I know people who are in the scene here in the Bronx like know either a large part of the history, like Chucky Brown, actually all of the history is a walking encyclopedia, or bits and pieces here and there. But I said, let me see what I can piece together, and the more I kept digging, the more and more I kept discovering. This was probably around 2021 or so when I started, really, really digging into the history. I've been back into punk and metal for a number of years by that point, but just wasn't investigating the Bronx history as much. Starting at the Bronx Historical Society really lit that fire under me. I started there in 2020. And when I started there, my main objective was to just start recording oral histories around all different kinds of, especially like underground youth culture in the Bronx, like graffiti, different kinds of dance, a bunch of different things. So I did a lot of that first. I kind of had to as you can probably imagine, I kind of had to ease into certain things with my higher ups as far as what we were doing. And eventually I think it got to 2023 where I said I'm going to run full speed ahead with this punk and metal history in the Bronx because it's something I've been wanting to do for a long time, and now I finally have enough, I guess, cachet here where I can start it. So I first probably contacted, I'd say, I think Muttley from Billy Club Sandwich was the first person I contacted, and more or less from the get-go, I'd already seen like, Chucky Brown's Hood TV. I'd already been watching videos and all, but I didn't know if Chucky Brown was an actual person or, I didn't know. I knew the channel. I saw so many amazing videos. I was like, wow, this is awesome. But from the get-go, Muttley and everyone else I talked to was like, you got to talk to Chucky. You got to talk to Chucky. So it wasn't too long after that I talked to Chucky. And yeah, I'll let Chucky say more from there. But that's a little bit of the backstory. There's more I could say, but I'll end it there.
Right on. I love that story, and I'm glad the Bronx welcomed you, and you are paying it forward. And Chucky is kind of from another planet. Dude is a legend. I think most people now know Chucky as a promoter and a band guy and Hood TV, but like, dude, you've been in countless bands. Can you condense the backstory of Chucky Brown into a blurb? Because I don't even think it's possible, but I'll let you try.
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me. Appreciate it. Glad to be on. I was born and raised in the Bronx. Went to public school, junior high school, and high school as well. Always into music. My parents were into music. My mother was big into music, so there was always music in the house. Then when I got to junior high school, I met another fellow metalhead at the time, which was rare because in the Bronx, especially around that section of the Bronx, which was on East Tremont and Prospect Avenue in the Bronx. So there wasn't too many kids that were into rock or just metal music in general. But I met one particular guy who we ended up being friends. His name is Jorge George Vasquez, which you know as well, Dr. Payne. And me and him became buddies and whatnot. And then from there, in high school was completely different because in high school, I met up with a whole bunch of other friends that was into that music as well. And a lot of these people ended up having bands. Like, for example, I went to high school with Gio back in Theodore Roosevelt High School in the Bronx. And a bunch of us used to get together and hang out. We also had a music class in Roosevelt High School, which is where I ended up learning how to play bass. Shout out to Michael Tamasulu, who was our music teacher at the time. And I've been playing bass since I was like 16 years old. And from there, started forming bands and whatnot. My first band was actually the high school band at Theodore Roosevelt High School. And we performed, did assemblies and whatnot. And on drums was actually George Vasquez. On guitar was Danny Cabrera, who played in a band called Dead Season and Seizure Crypt. Who else? And yeah, that's about it in a nutshell, man. Most of my buddies were all in high school. And then from there, I started going to shows and whatnot, whether if it was punk, metal, hardcore, you name it, within all the 5 boroughs of New York City.
Amazing. George is a person that I love.
So, yeah.
Like, we hung out so much. Dead Season was incredible. We played a bunch of shows with them. That Roosevelt clique and crew, I'm glad they found you and you found them. That means a lot to me. I am always repping my hometown to anyone who will listen, and not just about underground metal, but obviously like Anthrax is one of my favorite bands. That's my back patch on my battle vest, and I even got compliments about it last night. I went to a concert here in Oakland, and people were like, "Wow, that's cool. Never see anybody with an Anthrax, Among the Living patch." And I was like, "Of course."
Which
man.
one in particular?
Oh, I mean, my patch is
Which backpack?
Oh, Among the Living.
Have I
You know,
heard
the
that?
front cover of Among the Living is, it was like my Bible for a long time, that album. It still kind of is. But
Oh, okay.
yeah, man. So I have a similar story, but I'm so fascinated
Love
about
that.
this exhibition, and again, shout out and to Gio Estrella, a dear friend of mine, and my condolences to him and his whole family for what he's going through. But also a genius guy. We would take hours to talk about his whole history, the band Family Tree, and all the shows he's booked, all the shows you've booked,
Yeah.
and all the countless encounters. But just the two of you, so you guys came together, and I feel like this exhibition is a sort of the child of both the Uptown Rumble videos and Chucky's channel. Like it's like a weird confluence of coolness. And we just don't see that kind of stuff. We have a punk rock museum in Vegas, and they have New York hardcore,
Wait.
and they don't, and occasionally bands pop up from that get their due. I know Demolition Hammer is playing like the biggest shows of their career right now all over the world at festivals and
Yeah.
stuff. But we don't get the props. People know about Ace Frehley, and people know that Steven Tyler grew up in like Yonkers or whatever, Lower Westchester, before he moved to Boston.
Sure.
But like really, the New York City doesn't get its. I feel like obviously New York hardcore always gets its due, and big New York, the biggest New York metal bands, Anthrax, getting the key to the city at the Big Four concert, which I went to. But it's just awesome to me. Like, please talk about like, so you had this idea to put this exhibition together, Dr. Payne. Like, what was the criteria to put these groups in? Not just obviously to attract people to like Kiss and stuff like that, but obviously also the underground, and to give it equal footing is really impressive to me.
Yeah, so one of the main thoughts in my mind, both in leading up to the exhibit and definitely in installing everything and all, was, the Bronx gets tremendous props, and rightly so, for so many other different kinds of music. I mean, whether it's hip hop, whether it's salsa, whether it's, reggaeton. I mean, literally, you could go down the list, like, and people who are familiar with different kinds of music, they'll give the Bronx props for those different genres. But as I started talking to more and more people, and people were giving material, like it's a very grassroots approach, of course. I just realized, like, it's not only these other genres. It's these genres that people don't commonly associate with the Bronx, that the Bronx has done major things into, including like the big bands, like you mentioned, or the big musicians, Ace Frehley, Anthrax, etc. But those bands wanted to come about if it weren't for the kind of underground scenes that fostered that kind of music to begin with. So I wanted to make sure that the underground scene in the Bronx was given, I'd say, probably even more attention than the larger bands. I mean, part of that too is the larger bands and musicians are just much harder to get in touch with. So, but it was also intentionally so. And, to also document real on the ground stuff, I mean, which Chucky is incredibly helpful with and remembers like more details than like God himself, like where bands played, like where the venues were in the Bronx at any given time, because that's a part of the whole landscape too, and the flyers, all of that. So that was my way of thinking, to highlight this incredibly rich musical scene that people don't often notice, whether they're in the Bronx or especially if they're outside the Bronx, they have no clue. But make the argument that the Bronx can throw down with basically any genre of music and hold equal weight with any place else in the U.S.
Right on. Ghost Cult. We are luckily we don't have rock or metal in our name, so it kind of means we could be whatever we want to be. And primarily, we're known for rock and metal. But I have a vast musical interest that goes beyond just rock and metal. And I actually minored in musicology, and I studied jazz in the Bronx, and went to concerts with my mom and jazz clubs, and saw all the greats in the '80s. And I didn't know what I was watching, or I was so lucky. And they, and also salsa and Latin jazz is humongous, and I've seen so many shows and concerts and things. Ruben Blades gave a speech at a college graduation I attended, and then his band played later that night at a party. I mean, like, crazy. People don't realize the rich history. It's not just the Yankees. It's not just one of the five boroughs. It's not just the birthplace of hip hop.
Right.
It's a lot of things, and rock and metal have a huge history there. And I've been lucky enough to talk to a few people, real legends in the music business, who are from also from the Bronx, not just Johnny Zazula, who signed Metallica originally and created Megaforce Records. John and Marsha. John Zazula is from the projects on Boston Road, and not too far from where I'm from in the projects on White Plains Road. So like, it's a hard scrabble life coming up. There's not a lot of doesn't have pockets of wealth like Manhattan did or Brooklyn does, but it's just really interesting to me. I think that translated to the artistry, the grittiness, the realness, the basic survival instincts. Chucky, talk about the bands in your opinion that had to be included in this, because I want to, we'll have everything listed in the description where people can come visit, where people can check it out. But I'm sure for your input, there were probably groups that had to be mentioned, had to be visualized and shown.
Well, I started going to shows in like late 91, early 92. And around that time, there was a couple of shows happening in the Bronx, especially out in I believe Lehman High School. They used to have Battle of the Bands back in the day and whatnot. Also, by Lehman High School, there was a venue called the Chippewa Club, which was right by I believe the 6th Street, is it? Yeah. By the old motor vehicles in the Bronx. And the first time I went there, I believe it was Warcraft. Who else? Without a Cause, Joint Effort, and I forgot what other bands. And it's funny because Warcraft that played that night, I used to go to high school with the drummer. Shout out to Gerson Ortiz, which Dr. Payne had the chance to do an interview with him. They played that night. In Joint Effort was one of the members from, I believe, Fahrenheit 451, and Puerto Rican Myke, who sings for District 9, was singing in that band as well. And I believe Ray Malone, who was the drummer for Without a Cause, was in that band as well. Then fast forward, I believe a year later, there was Metal Madness 2, which happened on a church right off of Cortona Avenue, not too far from Tremont. And at that show was a bunch of bands like Rampage, Angry at the World, Super Duper, Without a Cause, Close Call, which ended up being District 9 later on. So a lot of the bands that had that buzz during that time, especially in the Bronx, was Without a Cause, Close Call, which ended up being District 9. There was another venue by the Woodlawn 4 train, not too far from the cemetery, called Blue Frog, which was more like a jazz club. And every now and then they'll have shows there. I think they had like maybe 2 or 3 shows there. And you had bands that played there as well. One of the bands that had a buzz as well was called Driven by Hatred, and they played there as well. I used to play in a band called Out for Blood, which featured George Vasquez, that I used to go to junior high school and high school as well. And Mike Bonilla, rest in peace. He's originally from Rampage. He played guitar with us. Rob, who sings for Everybody Gets Hurt, was in the band as well with us in Alpha Blood, and we played at that spot. So if you ask me, the bands that had like that buzz in the Bronx during that time, which I want to say early mid-90s, was Without a Cause, Driven by Hatred, Close Call, which ended up being District 9, Without a Cause ended up being Fahrenheit 451. And it was bands like that. And at that time, no social media, so everything was flyers, word of mouth. And it's funny because there used to be a phone number that you could call. I believe it was called OPIC SID. It was a 212 number, and you would call, and it was a recording, and you would listen, and there was talk about all the shows that was going to be going on within that week or that month. And if you have a show, at the end of the message, you could leave a message on whatever show you have, and they would announce it on the recording whenever you called that hotline.
That's amazing.
It was pretty cool.
I can't believe you can remember all this shit. I don't know what I wore yesterday. Like, holy shit. Really. I went to Blue Frog for a jazz show with my mom. I never saw bands there. There was also like a hole in the wall
Oh
spot.
wow.
There was a hole in the wall spot in Westchester Square because I remember I used to do the trinity of like the comic shop, the record shop, and then across
Right.
the sort of the little triangle where all the buses parked. There was like a little hole in the wall bar, and occasionally they would have all ages shows, and they were usually punk and not too much metal. But Driven by Hatred, I played with. District 9, I only saw when they were District 9. They were a humongous influence on my bands. Just that they were doing what they were doing. Rest in peace to
Right.
Bonilla. That I remember that dude. Again, I would never claim to be a hardcore kid, but hardcore, I was a metalhead and a little rocker, but I loved the hardcore community, and they showed me a lot of love, and a lot of my friends
Right.
especially when I get to high school, were all hardcore kids. So I went to like my first hardcore shows, like matinees at CB's. My first show ever, I talked about this a bit on my channel, which is Burn and Mucky Pup. Burn became Orange 9mm, and Mucky Pup, of
Ooh.
course, became Dog Eat Dog. And I was
Right.
terrified because I showed up to meet everybody at the Cube. I tell that story a lot with my long hair and my Injustice for All shirt. And my friends are like, what the fuck is wrong with you? You're going to get killed. Zip up your hoodie. Don't let anybody see your hair. Don't let anybody see that Metallica shirt. This is a punk show. A year later, everybody was bros, but like it was a weird dynamic in the late 80s. And then I started playing out about 10
Right.
years later with my bands, and we would do all the big places, but also Blackthorn and a lot of stuff like that. What surprised you, each of you? Steven, you can start. What surprised you? What did you learn about bands that you didn't know before this project, before this exhibition came together? What was like the most surprising fact about any band?
That's an excellent question. You know, I don't know if it was about any one particular band, and I guess looking back on it now, it makes complete sense. But in the moment, it was a lot of surprising that was going on. I guess it surprised me just how interconnected the scene really was. I mean, remained for so long. I mean, like for instance, you have Frankie, who was doing double duty, triple duty at times in different bands. I mean, just everyone was playing in each other's bands, supporting each other. Even people who might not have
Right.
ended up, staying close or whatever at the end of the day. Just the interconnections in the scene, I think, was really cool to document and to see. And it also made the work, especially of recording the oral histories, it made it pretty easy because there were probably three or four people who I got in touch with, including Chucky and Geo, but also Muttley and Gigi.
Right.
Those are probably the four people who I didn't need to know anyone else because between all four of them, they knew every single person pretty much there was to know. I mean, there are a few outliers here and there. But everyone knew everyone. Even eventually across the Bronx, and that was a really interesting thing to document. I'd say I know there's other things too, but that's the thing off the top of my head.
Yeah, I know this will be a hard one for Chucky because he knows everything about everybody. He knows where the bodies are buried. But like, did you learn something about friends of yours or bands you had forgotten? Did you get reminded of somebody, or nothing surprised you anymore?
Yeah, I mean, there was a couple of bands that Steven ended up reaching out to that I completely forgot about, even a little bit before my era. For example, what's his name that played with Chromax, the drummer from Co-op City, Payne.
Oh,
What's his name?
Gary
Forgot his
Sullivan.
name. The
Gary
drummer.
Sullivan. Gary Sullivan.
Yeah, Gary G, Man Sullivan, and whatnot. So it was a few cats, yeah, before my time that I have remembered when I was a kid that I completely have forgotten about. And then Payne, he came out with all these cats, and I'm like, oh shit, I forgot about these guys. So that was cool and whatnot. But the majority of the heads that he has, either I hooked them up with, or if not, I already knew, from either sharing the stage with them or just going to high school with them. And when I were we would always support each other anyway back in the day. So
Amazing. I love it.
that was the
So good. This is so much fun for me. I could literally talk all day about this. For people coming in cold to, I'm trying to send everybody I know to go to this thing. What should people look out for? Is there a particular order they should see the exhibit in? Is it just linear? I haven't been, so I don't know, and I'm asking sincerely.
Hey, you want to speak on that?
You can go first. I'll go after you. Yeah.
What's cool about it is that everything is basically in order. Like if it's, for example, thrash death metal, or if it's punk, or if it's hardcore. So if it's a person that doesn't know about a specific genre, whatever, everything it's in its own category and whatnot. So if it's hardcore punk, if it's thrash metal, death metal, whatever, everything is within its own category. So like that, whoever comes to visit will basically have an idea on any bands within that genre, and they can understand where they came from, what they put out, whether if it's a demo or an album. The whole shebang.
And I just add to that, in the back room, well, there's interactive parts, and it's two galleries, and in both galleries. One is a video kiosk that's almost entirely Chucky's videos.
Oh yeah.
On that, there's a guitar that Gio donated for the exhibit. One of his old guitars. It has a bunch of Bronx band stickers on it, but that's meant to be played.
Yeah.
Um, and then in the back room, there's two listening stations. One that has like, a kind of sample track from pretty much every band in the exhibit, including ones that might not have like photos or anything else. It's like, I think 60, 65 tracks. You just pick up a card and you put it on the box and it'll play the track. It's like a magnet that does it. And then there's clips of the oral histories in the other listening station, 1 to 2 minute clips, so you can hear people talk about, say, like the Bailey Avenue show where someone set off in 91, where someone set off a fire extinguisher, and, maybe only 2 bands played. You can hear someone talk about that story. Instead of like the full oral history, there's also a QR code on each of their baseball cards that someone can scan if they want to watch the full oral history later, but they're just little clips. So I'd say check out those interactive parts for sure. I mean, there's tons of photos and flyers and all on the wall also, but the interactive parts are a little something different.
Amazing. I love how your brain works.
As well.
Go on. Yeah, that's
stickers,
great.
Merch, flyers, professional photos, the whole shebang. Cassettes, CDs, vinyl stickers. You're going to see it all there.
Right on. I'm hopeful. I don't know what the resources are for this, but I'm hopeful that when this is over, it can live on somehow digitized or come back someday, boomerang back like Halley's Comet. I'm selfish. I'm not going to get to New York this year. I might get there next year. I haven't been home in a couple of years. I've lived out here for 5 years, but I'm so thrilled that this thing exists. I really appreciate the both of you and Gio for really coming together like Voltron and making this thing happen, because people are sick of hearing me. And it's funny, when I grew up and lived in New York, all I used to do beside rep my hometown was bang on the Bay Area. Like, I love the thrash metal. I love the crossover punk, even the history of funk and jazz in the East Bay. Like, I'm such a student of music. Like I said, musicology. Why am I a music journalist and sort of a semi-band dude again? Because I love music. Music is my everything. Do you guys, just as we start to wind this down, I want to give you back your time. Do you have a band that you thought, looking back, should have been much bigger and didn't get to be for whatever reason? Because band stuff happens. Chucky, is there a band that you played with or you watched come up and you thought, wow, these guys are going to be huge, and they weren't?
I'm gonna say bands like District 9. There was another band called Shooty's Groove that was really good from the Bronx. It's funny, I was taking the bus one day. I was on I believe it was the BX9 that runs throughout Fordham, and I was on the bus and some guy walked in, and I think he was wearing like a Biohazard Madball t-shirt, and it was rare to see that during that time. So we acknowledged each other, and when I got to speak to him, it was one of the members from Shooty's Groove. And then fast forward a year or two later, I saw them on TV. I believe it was a show called, I could be wrong, called Farm Club with Matt Pinfield, who used to be the VJ on MTV's 120 Minutes. He used to host the show, and I got to see them there. I caught it late, but bands like District 9, Shooty's Groove, even Fahrenheit 451 was another one. It's funny because they even got to open up for, I believe, Motorhead. And they went on the road with bands like H2O and whatnot. Never thought, fast forward, that I was going to be in a band with some of the band members in Crazy Eddie, which was cool. But yeah, bands like that, basically, yeah.
How about you, Dr. Payne? Do you have a band you thought would be much bigger and never got there?
Yeah, so I definitely second the bands that Chucky said, District 9, Fahrenheit 451, Shooty's Groove. I'd also add I guess a more obscure one, Arsenic. I mean, one of the earliest bands,
Oh, yeah.
what would become death metal. They never were, they were just kids in the projects in the South Bronx, like the far South Bronx. So they never had money for like recording sessions or any of that. They put out their own like demos and recorded in their apartment, like a lot of Bronx bands. But I mean, they were playing the kind of music that Necrophagia and that Death were playing in like 84, 85. And to think that, the South Bronx is one of the earliest centers of death metal, you don't hear that. I think that story should be better known. And I wish, if Arsenic had had the resources that, kids in Florida had at that time, then, they probably would have become a little better, better known. But their band, I mean, I'm happy to see bands like Demolition Hammer really blowing up now because they're one of my all-time.
Yeah.
But
and 24 by 7 Spies was another one.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, Chucky and I are on the same wavelength.
Right on. I love that so much. I'll throw out my own. They were gods to us, but I thought Irate was going to be like a Cannibal Corpse or an Immolation.
Oh yeah, Irate too.
Because they did tour. They did tour extensively. They did get over to Europe. They did a lot of things nobody else did. Billy Club Sandwich also got to Europe, and there are some other underground bands. But I really thought like Irate was going to be like our death metal Cannibal Corpse, like the Bronx's own, and they were hugely important to my first band that was really more thrash and not as hardcore and death metal. And I do want to say, like, to all the fans watching that are fans of modern deathcore, there was a style of music that blended the early death metal of the classic death metal, American death metal, and hardcore, and it was called Bronx deathcore, and it was more death metal than anything else, but it had the hardcore heart and roots, and people don't understand that we invented that shit. I understand that, like, deathcore and metalcore and all the core things, everything is core if you try hard enough and you dumb down your riffs enough and put in a couple of breakdowns, but like, these are not the same. We are not the same animals. These are different species. And no disrespect, because I like a lot of those deathcore bands, and some of them are actually very competent and great death metal bands also, like Whitechapel and stuff like that. But at the same time, I know Lorna Shore is the band everybody's talking about now today. Their new record is coming out as we record this. But like, the Bronx did it first in a lot of ways. We were leaders in everything. Yeah. Jazz, graffiti, breakdancing, snapping on people, b-ball, everything. Like, I'm sure Chucky can relate. Like, when I was a little kid, there was like waves of things. It would be violence, and then it'd be like, okay, instead of killing each other, we're gonna break dance or snap on each other or rap battle or
absolutely
something else. And then everybody became friends, and we traded baseball cards and played with GI Joes on the rocks or whatever in the projects, and then back to violence. So like, cycles. Everything is a cycle. Last question for both of you, and I appreciate you for indulging me today, and it's been an honor, honestly. Do you have a favorite New York City band record of all time? Just one band that you go back to this record again and again. I'd love to know which ones.
Oh man, that's hard. It's a bunch, man. I mean, thinking right now, like Leeway, the Born to Expire record, the First Burn. I don't even know which Agnostic Front. Sick of It All, the first record, the Scratch the Surface record, Madball, I believe is the not the Hold It Down, the one with the baby with the gun. Oh, I forgot the name of that album. It's a bunch, man. It's a hard question. It's a whole bunch. Sick of It All, Cro-Mags, Leeway, Agnostic Front, Crumb Suckers. It's a bunch, man. It's a bunch.
Yeah.
And metal, Then you have bands like Immolation and stuff like that. And it's funny because I just found out that the drummer from Deicide is from the Bronx. I didn't know that, which was cool.
Absolutely.
What about you, Payne?
Yeah, that's a
It's a
hard
hard
question.
question.
I'd say off the top of my head, 24/7 Spies Harder Than You. I love that album. I go back to it all the time. Burn, really dig, the Burn EP. That's one of the standbys that I will go to on a pretty regular basis. Set It Off, Chucky. I think that's not the one you're
Oh
talking
yeah,
about.
that's
That's the one you're
right.
talking
Set
about?
it off.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure, Set It
yeah,
Off. I
yes,
rate seriously all of their albums. I mean,
yeah.
the EP has a special,
Biohazard, the first one,
yeah.
Urban Discipline, it's another classic.
Looking forward to seeing,
Age of Quarrel.
what Brass Knuckle Brigade comes out with. Excited about that. Yeah, Age of
Oh
Quarrel
yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, it's so hard to choose. There's so many awesome albums that have come out of New York. That's for sure.
Anything from the Ramones, even.
That's right. That's right. Crazy Eddie.
Yeah,
Shout
Dead
out to Chucky.
Boys, all that good shit.
Right on. Chucky,
Well,
what's your favorite band you've had? Like, what's your favorite band you've ever been in? Use yourself.
I'm gonna have to go with Crazy Eddie. Yeah, Crazy Eddie. Never thought in a million years I was gonna team up with shout out to Lenny B, shout out to Kevin, who's been in Fahrenheit 451. Shout out to my ex-bandmate drummer Jason Madrock, who also played in a hardcore band called Down Low. I'm gonna have to say Crazy Eddie, man, because we had a lot of fun. And not even just playing and doing shows, but like making music, rehearsing, practicing. Those guys were cool, man. I had a lot of fun with that band.
Right on. And
So Crazy Eddie. Second
Crazy
to
Eddie,
that, I'm gonna say Abject.
Oh, killer! Yeah, that was a killer band. Yeah, man.
You heard anything on Abject?
Yeah, I remember.
Oh, thank you,
I think I had a
second to that would be Abject.
Yeah, Abject. That's killer. Yeah, I had a mixtape of all Bronx bands.
Oh,
It's
cool.
Somewhere here. Good luck to me finding it.
The guys in the Abject, cool. The guys in Abject was Jamie Hammer. He used to be in a band called Dealing With It. And then when Abject disbanded, he formed a band called Close to the Edge. The drummer Shuffles, he was in that band as well, Dealing With It. And our guitar player Mannequins, who's originally from Washington, D.C., he plays now with a band called 8, which is going to be playing, I believe, this weekend with 24/7 Spies. And that was in the Abject. Yeah.
That's wild. And also, I
played bass in that band.
Oh, sick. I can't be remiss if I didn't mention that Half a Living Color is also from the Bronx and went to one of my alma maters, Bronx Community College.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Will Calhoun and Muzz Skilling's the original bassist of the band, and Doug Wimbish is also, I think, from the Bronx too. So, he's only like one of the most famous bass players of all time. So we have a rich history. I want to thank you for bringing out that rich history and giving me a chance to nerd out with both of you about this. I hope to see you and talk to you again in the future. Like I said, Ghost Cult, we're going to try to support this thing to the end of the exhibition. And we'll link everything in the description where people can get all the details, come to visit, what they should expect, everything. Awesome. Just thank you both so much. It's been really an honor to hang out with y'all and chop it up with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Keith. Can I add one thing real quick?
Please do.
I see you're wearing a Dawn of the Dead shirt.
Oh, I am, yes.
So October 31st, this exhibit will be up through, I think now January or February. We've just extended it a little bit. Have to put out the official notification. But we have 2 museums. We have Edgar Allan Poe Cottage as well. And there's one of the galleries in our Museum of Bronx History that doesn't have Uptown Rumble in it right now. Just to let you know, in lieu of this shirt, in both of those spaces, it'll be across both of our museums, we're going to have a George Romero exhibit opening October 31st. Another son of the Bronx, grew up in Parkchester. So we'll be highlighting his Bronx life and highlighting, the wide span of his artistic vision in that exhibit. So that's opening October 31st.
That is incredible, and I spent a lot of time running for my life around Parkchester. So, no wonder he came. If he came from there, no wonder what's in his head. What a genius! I got to meet him once; it was amazing. Again, both of you, thanks so much for this. We will continue repping you guys, as I like to rep my hometown and use my platform to do everything I can to share what I can and uplift metal and punk all over the world, but especially a lot of love for where I'm from. Thank you so much, both of you. And again, congratulations. And thanks again for this exhibition. I'm so pleased. Thanks for hanging with Ghost Cult. We'll see you guys soon.